I've posted this story once before in a lot less detail in a different thread, but never here. It is 100% true. It happened back in the late 1980s when I was home one summer on break from college. About 2 years prior, my dad had purchased an old house with the intention of eventually tearing it down to build a new home. The house was built in 1916, and like most homes built in that era, it had an unconventional floor plan. There was a central living room and kitchen like any normal home, but the 3 bedrooms were more akin to separate apartments. Each had its own separate outside entrance, a private bathroom, and a door that led to the common area living room and kitchen. Perhaps the place was originally intended to be a boarding house or something. I really don't know. The other thing that was a little creepy about the house was that it was all wood. The ceilings, walls, and floors were all brown, and nothing was ever painted or plastered. My dad was a pretty cool guy. While he was waiting for permits and financing, he let 3 of my friends live there for free in exchange for watching the place. They had a lot of parties, but my dad didn't care as long as none of the neighbors complained. I went to a few parties there myself when I was lucky enough to be home from college. Eventually, 2 of my friends moved out, leaving my one buddy there to watch the mostly empty house on his own. He was not the type of person to be afraid of living alone in a half-empty house, so he was fine with the situation. I'm at home one afternoon when the phone rings. It's my buddy, and he sounds terrified. He tells me to call the police and to meet him out in front of the driveway of the house, but under no conditions to go in. I ask him why, and he tells me that there is a crazy clown in the house. Apparently, he was sick with a flu in bed for the previous 2 days. When he finally felt well enough to go into the kitchen to get something to eat, he runs face to face with a crazy woman dressed in a clown suit and makeup who starts screaming at him. It was then that he ran out of the house and called me in a panic from a nearby gas station. I called the police and then drove over to the house, which was about 2 miles away. I find my buddy on the sidewalk out front, and he's really shaken up. I ask him to describe what he saw, and he keeps saying that there is a crazy clown woman in the house. I ask for more specific details, and he describes her as dressed in a white clown suit with red makeup smeared all over her face. He is still a little sick, so he looks really bad, and honestly, he was really freaking me out as well. There was no way in hell that I was going to go into that house to investigate his story. After what seems like an eternity, a cop shows up. My buddy tells him the same exact story. The cop then goes into the house while we wait outside. After about 5 minutes, he emerges escorting a crazy clown woman who looks exactly as my friend described her. She has wild, unkempt brown hair and is wearing this weird, baggy, one-piece, all-white body jumper suit. What was really disturbing, though, was her face. She had a tube of lipstick which she crudely spread red all over her cheeks in a failed attempt, I suppose, to make them look rosy. Although we were both freaked out, the cop thought it was hilarious. The clown woman claimed it was her house, and then accused us of being on drugs and trespassing on her property. When the cop told her to get in the back of his squad car, she warned him that she had powerful friends in, quote, Tinseltown, who would have him fired. When he comes back to talk to us, he tells us he can't arrest her for breaking and entering because the house is half abandoned. He said the best he could do was drive her a few blocks away and hope that she doesn't wander back. This, of course, freaks us out even more. Fortunately, though, when they run a background check on her, it turns out she has an outstanding warrant and would be going to jail instead. That was the last time we saw her. When we go back into the house, we found all kinds of crazy stuff written on the kitchen cabinets in the same red lipstick she rubbed all over her face. There was also some 10-day-old fish in the fridge that my friend never got around to eating that she cooked on the stove and ate. The really scary thing, though, was that this crazy woman was in the same house with my friend for at least a day while he was sick and semi-delirious in bed with a fever. She was probably harmless, but who knows what she would have done if she stumbled upon him while he was sleeping. His door was unlocked the entire time. Fortunately, she never did, as far as we know. little bit of backstory beforehand. My parents are divorced. I live primarily in Australia, but travel back to see my father, his family, and my extended family in the UK every chance I can spare. This story revolves around one of these visits. At the time of the visit, I was 13 years old and due to scheduling conflicts, would be traveling alone without my other sibling. Luckily, most airlines and airports with their SALT offer assistance programs for unaccompanied minors. That program includes an identifying tag, escorts throughout the airport, help with check-in and priority boarding. I was boarded first. My chaperone said goodbye and handed me off to the flight attendants. So far, so good. Nothing of real significance happened for the first few hours of the flight, but I couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. I kept feeling the sensation like someone was watching me, but every time I glanced around, I couldn't see the source. I chalked it up to being a little nervous about flying alone and tried to watch some in-flight movies to calm myself down. The next significant event was when I got up to pee. Now, something caught my eye that hadn't before. There was a man, about 4 rows back, in a middle aisle seat who was staring at me. He wasn't making much attempt to hide the fact that he was looking at me, and out of shyness I just looked down and broke our stare and tried to ignore him. As I walked by, I felt almost like he was gesturing to me to look at him, as if he wanted to ask me a question. In that moment, I made the decision to ignore him and pretend I hadn't seen him gesture to me. My mother has always been very safety conscious, and I credit her with giving me a healthy suspicion of strangers. She made it very clear that while I was traveling alone, I didn't have to answer to any other adults but my chaperones, and that if someone tried to talk to me or make me do something for them, I had permission to ignore them or report them to the airport staff. So that's what I did. I walked past him, went to the bathroom, and walked back to my seat with my head down. I can't verify whether or not he kept trying to get my attention because I was a little freaked out to look back. All I can say is that my creep senses kept on tingling as the flight went on. These bad feelings all came to a head during the sleeping hours of the flight. For those who haven't traveled international long hauls, the sleeping hours are for people to sleep by simulating nighttime in the plane. This means no trolley service, dim lights, and all the airplane screens are shut off. I was very groggy and sleep deprived at the time. I probably should have tried to get some rest, but I couldn't get comfortable and was just trying to ride out my time watching movies. This is when he approached me. He put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed. Then he said something that I didn't hear with my headphones on. I removed them and turned to give him my groggy but full attention. Me. Sorry? Man. Will you come to the back of the plane with me? Please. Me. Utterly confused by this question. Have I done something? Man. No. I would just like you to come to the back of the plane with me. He crouched down to be at eye level with me. Me. Glancing back to the end of the plane, which is dark, behind a curtain and the only bathroom is vacant. Man. I have money. He pulls out a wallet and shows me a wad of cash. If you'd like some. I just want to talk to you at the back of the plane. It'll just be for a moment. I'm very confused as to what to do when this is happening. Looking back, I remember feeling annoyed, less afraid of danger and more irritated at being asked to stop watching a movie and do something. Due to my tired state, it wasn't connecting that I might be in danger. I was just being asked to talk to this guy about something. I wonder if he might have convinced me with a little more prodding, but luckily, he didn't get any further. A woman behind me, who I realized later was listening in for the entire conversation, pulled down her eye mask, leant over between the seat gap and said, "She isn't interested. You need to return to your seat right now, or I'll call for the flight attendant." I've never seen a man move so fast. He tucked his wallet away and scurried back to his seat, slid on his eye mask, and rotated away from us so we wouldn't see his face. She turns her attention to me and says, If he comes back over, you wake me up or call for the flight attendant. If you need to use the bathroom, use the one in the center of the plane. It's more well lit." And she reaches through and rests a hand on my shoulder. I give a thank you, and she leans back in her seat, but keeps her eye mask off, shooting looks in the man's direction. Near the last few hours of the flight, I didn't feel uneasy or like I was being watched anymore. The woman, who was traveling with her 2 kids, kept leaning in and asking me questions about where I'm going, who is picking me up from the airport, etc. When she discovers that I'm meeting extended family at the terminal, her face clears and she offers to walk out with me to the baggage claim. We landed, got off the plane, and when I saw my father in the arrivals lounge, I waved her a fond goodbye, said thank you, and walked off. As for the guy, I have no idea what happened. The encounter was so bizarre and short that I might have just discarded it from my memory immediately. Looking back, though, I always feel apprehension and dread at what his intentions were. I have some theories, but I'm glad I didn't get put in a position to find out. To the woman who saved me, you're my hero, and I only wish I could thank you properly for looking out for me. To the man who propositioned me on a plane, let's not meet again.